A truck barrels down a mountain pass in the early hours of the morning, carrying a father, a mother, and their 10-year-old son. It's a routine trip, until suddenly it's not. The vehicle crashes, flipping over in a violent wreck, spilling thousands of liters of sulfuric acid onto the road. The driver and his wife are found dead inside, but their son, he's nowhere to be found. There were no footprints, no drag marks, no logical way he could have survived. And yet, Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez, just 10 years old, had vanished without a trace. What happened that morning on the Somosierra mountain pass? Was this just a tragic accident? Or was something far more sinister at play? If you're fascinated by cold cases, secret files, unsolved disappearances, and supernatural phenomena, you've just found your new favorite channel. Subscribe now, turn on notifications to never miss a new video, and share with others. Don't forget to hit the like button. It helps us create even better content every day. The disappearance of Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez is considered one of the most baffling unsolved mysteries in Europe. A case that defies logic, leaving behind more questions than answers. On June 24, 1986, a 10-year-old boy embarked on what should have been a routine journey with his parents. His father, a truck driver, was hauling a 25,000-liter tank of sulfuric acid across Spain. His mother rode alongside them, and Juan Pedro, thrilled to be joining his father's trip for the first time, sat in the back of the cab. But what should have been an uneventful drive turned into an unspeakable tragedy. As the truck descended the Somosierra mountain pass, something went terribly wrong. The vehicle began to pick up speed, accelerating dangerously, despite having multiple opportunities to slow down. Witnesses later reported that the truck's brake lights flickered on and off multiple times, almost as if the driver was struggling for control. Then, disaster struck. The truck crashed violently, overturning and spilling thousands of liters of corrosive sulfuric acid onto the road. By the time authorities arrived, both parents were found dead in the wreckage. But there was one detail that made no sense. Juan Pedro was gone. There were no remains, no footprints, no sign that he had been ejected from the truck. His small body should have been there, but it wasn't. To this day, no one knows what happened to Juan Pedro. How does a 10-year-old boy vanish into thin air after a devastating crash? Was he taken? Did he escape? Or was something even more chilling behind his disappearance? The accident on the Somosierra mountain pass was violent, catastrophic, and immediate. The tanker truck, carrying 25,000 liters of highly corrosive sulfuric acid, crashed into a sharp curve at high speed, overturning and spilling its deadly cargo onto the pavement. By the time emergency responders arrived, the scene was pure devastation. The acid had already begun to eat away at the asphalt, releasing toxic fumes into the air. Rescuers approached cautiously, shielding themselves from the chemical burns that the liquid could cause on contact. Inside the wreckage, the bodies of Andres Martinez and Carmen Gomez, Juan Pedro's parents, were discovered, lifeless, still strapped into their seats. The impact had been instantaneous and fatal, but as responders examined the cabin, a chilling realization dawned on them. Juan Pedro wasn't there. There was no sign of the 10-year-old boy who had been traveling with his parents. No body, no remains, not even a trace of clothing. The initial assumption was horrifying, yet logical. Perhaps the acid had completely dissolved his body, but experts quickly ruled that out. While sulfuric acid is highly corrosive, it would take several hours for a body to dissolve completely, and it would need to be fully submerged in the liquid the entire time. That hadn't happened. This wasn't a case of acid erasure. This was a disappearance. But how? As investigators retraced the truck's final moments, something deeply unsettling emerged. The vehicle's tachometer, a device that records sudden decelerations or stops, revealed that the truck had made 12 abrupt stops before crashing. 12. The road leading to the crash site was a steep mountain pass, but there were no traffic lights, no intersections, and no valid reason for a large truck to stop so frequently, unless it had to. Had Andres been forced to stop, the most disturbing theory began to form. Perhaps someone was inside the truck with them, forcing Andres to make those stops. And perhaps that someone had something to do with Juan Pedro's disappearance. Witnesses later claimed that they saw a white van parked near the crash site, just minutes after the accident. Inside the van were 3 people, a blonde woman, a blonde man, and an older woman with piercing blue eyes. One witness even reported seeing the blonde woman running toward the wreckage just after the crash, as if looking for something or someone. Then, as quickly as they had arrived, the van sped away and was never seen again. Could it be that Juan Pedro had been taken from the crash site? If so, why? With no logical explanation for Juan Pedro's disappearance, theories began to spiral into the unknown. One of the most widely believed possibilities was that the truck had been carrying something other than sulfuric acid, something valuable enough that criminals were willing to kill for it. Some speculated that Andres Martinez, a truck driver with no history of criminal activity, had unknowingly been transporting drugs hidden inside the tanker. If so, then the stops before the crash may have been meetings with cartel members, demanding access to the hidden cargo. But if this was a drug deal gone wrong, why take Juan Pedro? That's where the kidnapping theory emerges. What if Juan Pedro had seen something he wasn't supposed to see? If criminals had intercepted the truck, demanding access to the secret cargo, and the child had witnessed the entire encounter, perhaps he had become a liability, a loose end that needed to be controlled. If that was the case, then Juan Pedro wasn't missing. He had been taken. A year after the disappearance, a strange sighting raised new questions. A driving instructor in Madrid reported that a blind elderly woman and a young boy had walked into his office, asking for directions to the US Embassy. The boy was quiet, standing close to the woman, looking fearful. The instructor remembered feeling that something was off about the interaction. As he watched them leave, it suddenly hit him. The boy looked exactly like Juan Pedro. Rushing back to his office, he grabbed a missing persons poster and ran outside to compare. But by then, the woman and the child had vanished. Could Juan Pedro still be alive? Had he been taken across borders, forced to live a life far from home? One final chilling fact adds yet another layer of mystery. When forensic teams examined the wreckage, they found traces of heroin residue hidden in a compartment inside the truck. Andres had no known ties to drug trafficking, but was it possible that he had been used as an unknowing smuggler? If so, who was behind it? And more importantly, had Juan Pedro been caught in the middle of something far more dangerous than anyone realized? To this day, no remains of Juan Pedro have ever been found. No confirmed sightings, no leads that have led to answers. It's as if, on that early morning in 1986, the child simply vanished from existence. Was this a case of trafficking gone wrong? Had Juan Pedro been taken by criminals who staged the accident? Did he somehow survive and run away? Or is there an answer so disturbing that no one has even considered it yet? The disappearance of Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of modern times, because accidents happen, but children don't just disappear. The disappearance of Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez remains one of the most baffling mysteries in modern history. The truck crash on Somosierra Mountain Pass was horrific, a violent collision that left both of his parents dead. But the most unsettling part of the entire case wasn't the accident itself, it was the absence of the child. Rescue workers combed through the wreckage, expecting to find his small body somewhere among the debris. But there was nothing. No sign that he had been thrown from the truck, no footprints leading away from the crash site. It was as if Juan Pedro had never been there at all, but he was there. Witnesses saw him with his parents before the journey. He had been excited about the trip, unaware that this would be the last time anyone would see him. His disappearance wasn't a question of whether he was in the truck. He was. The question was what happened to him after the crash. Investigators were left with limited possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. If Juan Pedro had been ejected from the truck, his body would have been found somewhere near the wreckage. The sulfuric acid despite its corrosive nature, could not have completely dissolved him without a trace in such a short time. And yet, there was nothing. That left only one explanation. Someone had taken him. The white van seen near the crash site became the center of one of the most haunting theories. Witnesses described 3 individuals inside: a man, a woman, and an elderly lady. The blonde-haired woman had been seen running toward the wreckage moments after the crash, as if looking for something or someone. The van was never found. The occupants were never identified. And most chillingly, Juan Pedro was never seen again. Had they been following the truck for miles, waiting for the right moment? Was the accident staged to create the perfect cover for a kidnapping? Had the child been taken before the authorities arrived, leaving no trace behind? If Juan Pedro had been abducted, the next question was why? Was it because of something his father was transporting? The traces of heroin residue found in the truck suggested that the vehicle may have been used for smuggling, possibly without the father's knowledge. If criminals had used the truck to transport drugs, had Juan Pedro witnessed something he shouldn't have? Perhaps they had meant to take the entire family. But when the crash occurred, they took only the boy, eliminating the only living witness. Or was the truth even stranger? 1 year after the disappearance, the Madrid sighting shook the case once again. A blind elderly woman was seen walking into a driving school, holding the hand of a young boy. She asked for directions to the US Embassy, speaking in a foreign language. The instructor, sensing something was off, later realized that the child bore an uncanny resemblance to Juan Pedro. By the time he retrieved a missing persons poster, the woman and child had vanished. Had Juan Pedro been taken out of the country? Had he been sold into trafficking, erased from existence, given a new identity? Or had he been raised under a different life, never remembering who he really was? Despite all efforts, no solid leads have ever surfaced. The case remains one of Spain's most chilling, unsolved mysteries. A boy cannot simply vanish without a trace. And yet, in the wreckage of that twisted truck, with the smell of acid burning into the ground, Juan Pedro was gone. To this day, the truth remains buried in the shadows. The disappearance of Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez is more than just an unsolved case. It's a story that defies logic, one that haunts anyone who dares to dig deeper. A 10-year-old boy doesn't just vanish, and yet, decades later, there is still no trace of him, no answers, no closure. His parents died instantly in the crash. He should have been there, but the fact that he wasn't raises unsettling questions. Did he survive the accident and wander off, disoriented, only to meet an even darker fate? Or did someone pull him from that wreckage before authorities arrived, ensuring that he would never be found? The white van, the mysterious blonde woman, the elderly lady with piercing blue eyes, all of them seem to be pieces of a puzzle that remains frustratingly incomplete. Whoever they were, they vanished just as quickly as Juan Pedro did. And then, there's the Madrid sighting, the boy who looked exactly like Juan Pedro, the blind woman guiding him, speaking a foreign language. What were they doing? Where were they going? And more importantly, was that truly him? If it was, then he was still alive. But if that's true, why hasn't he resurfaced? That is what makes this case so chilling. It's not just about a disappearance, it's about the erasure of a person's existence. Someone, somewhere, knows exactly what happened to Juan Pedro, but they have kept that secret buried for nearly 40 years. If he's alive, does he even remember who he was? Or was he forced into a life where the truth no longer mattered? What makes this case even more terrifying is that it's not the only one of its kind. Every year, thousands of children go missing. Some are found. Others are never seen again. And for many of them, no one ever learns the truth. Maybe that's what happened here. Or maybe, buried in some forgotten document, hidden in the memories of someone who was there that day, the answer is still waiting to be uncovered. Could this case ever be solved? Or has Juan Pedro become nothing more than a ghost of the past, swallowed by a mystery that will never be answered? One thing is certain: accidents happen. But children don't just disappear. What do you think? Was Juan Pedro a victim of a tragic accident? Or was he taken, his identity erased, forced into a life he never chose? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love dark, mysterious, and unsolved cases, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because in our next story, we'll explore another case even stranger than this one. See you in the next video.